Welcome to the United States of America podcast. I am your host, Niti, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here on North Carolina. We welcome you to make yourself comfortable as we go over the current state of the world and our nation. If you missed past episodes, please be sure to take the time to at least watch the first episode so that you have a proper introduction to our conversations. These conversations are not otherwise happening in any sequential order. Please be aware that we expect you to behave with honor in our comment section. We are a people at peace, and we have declared peace to all nations around the world. This is not a marketing or sales podcast, and we are not sovereign citizens. Sovereign citizen is an oxymoron, and if you say you are a sovereign citizen, you are a moron. A sovereign is a free and honorable living man or woman who operates under God's law, natural law, Hermetic law, and who honors themselves and others in peace. One definition for the word citizen is slave, but there are different kinds of citizens. Putting those two words together is an oxymoron. We also do not promote or condone TikTok, Facebook, or other social media games to test the system or impose your beliefs onto society at large. This is not a marketing or promotional channel. We are shining a light on knowledge that is being hidden from you. We are sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. We are interested in helping you reclaim your birthright and your inheritance. We are not sitting in judgment of you. And, just know that this information is a beacon of light for you to use when you choose to seek it. We do have marshals at arms that are designated as moderators who are assisting in the comment section. Please be kind with your words. If you diminish others, you will be put in a timeout or deleted and blocked as deemed necessary. If you have questions, please put them in all caps and only enter them once per show. I am joined on air with our North Carolina Ombudsman, Cynthia Pinkston, who assists us with keeping order during the podcast. I am proud to introduce you to Justice Anna Maria, who is joining us live from Alaska today. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Okay, so we are getting really good at this. This is getting to be a nice, good little habit. We're just going to dive in, Anna. And today, we want to start with Cynthia and I want to bring I guess we're going to raise an objection, Anna. We're going to raise an objection, both Cynthia and I will. We object to the people that are out there in the assemblies who are targeting us and any living man or woman who is especially within the assembly and, trying to, they're basically slandering. They're slandering Cynthia as our ombudsman. They slander me. They slander anybody who is speaking truth. And we just don't, we have a zero tolerance for that, I think. And so Anna is here to hear our objections and for us to talk about this openly. We're not going to be doing this, by the way, in every single episode or anything by any, that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in operating in clarity. We refuse to operate in chaos and confusion, friends. We refuse it. So why don't you present the situation, Cynthia? Why don't we talk about that first?
All right. So boots on the ground in the assembly. A lot of people, not North Carolina, we had an infiltrator. It was called a coordinator. We had more people on the outside of the assembly than in the assembly until that coordinator resigned. Now we have 0 people on a waiting list, put out, timeout, 0. We have no issues. We work as a team. Everybody's welcome to their government. So now we have this Michigan assembly and this Paul who says we're controlling you and that he's supposed to be vetting these people, questioning these people. He has 4 or 5 stages of vetting. He has classes. He has questions. He has a membership contract and other things before these people are ever allowed access to get into their government and into their assembly. If there was a vote, now we talked about this, come up, These people that are put out, held out, and this is not the only assembly. There's Texas. Texas is running less than 20 people. They have no committees, no nothing. They might have one or two, but they have no people in their assembly. They won't let them in. I hear this day in and day out. What are you in North Carolina doing to get the people in that they're not? We require 2 witnesses, a 1-page declaration, and they're 928s. They're in. End of the question. You don't have to sign a membership contract. You don't have to have an agreement. We're not going to vet you. We don't want to know what kind of underwear you've got. We don't want to know what you got to say. We don't want to know anything. You're in. Now, we'll teach you and we'll work with you, and we're all one group, one family. Yeah, there are people in the family that, are problems, but we're going to deal with that. But I hear this regularly. Why can I not get to my assembly? Why are the coordinators helling me out? Well, then we get that Terry Somm on the coordinator's call goes through this vetting and all of the list of an infiltrator and all of these qualifications, hoops you have to jump through. And you're supposed to look at every single person. Well, North Carolina's doors are open. We accept all. We have 0 people held out on timeout. 0, including the old coordinator. He just needs to return some of the documents and we're good to go. We have 0. Anna, what do you have to say about that?
Well, there could be a number of motivations for this, one of which is, the motivation of the coordinators to not have a lot of work to do, because the people that are coming in from a completely different system. And I talked a little bit about this last night on the webinar. We have all been raised in a foreign system of government. We have all been raised in the British territorial democracy that is, in fact, a subcontractor, a federal subcontractor of our American government. And because we have been raised in that foreign system, we are used to a system that is very hierarchical, where, there's a CEO and then there's all of the different levels of peons underneath the CEO. And this begins when we're just children, and it endures throughout most of our lifetimes. Most people never get out of that system because, when they're young, they have the school hierarchy, then they have the military hierarchy, then they have the college or superior school hierarchy, then they have the corporate hierarchy. All their lives, there's somebody telling them what to do, how to do it, where to do it, when to do it. And they're lost without that. They come into our assemblies and they're confused. And unfortunately, some of our coordinators have been confused too. And they assume that they're the CEOs all of a sudden. And that's not their role at all. The role of the coordinator is to assist the assembly to assemble, to teach everybody, okay, well, we need these 4 pillars up and functioning, and this is how we're, assembled, this is the order in which things happen, and this is why we do this, and, they're there as a local go-to person to get answers to the questions that people have about the assembling process. They're supposed to be a go-between between the assembly and the federation, so that local people can go to the coordinator, they can ask a question, the coordinator can go back to the federation, get the answer, and make a communications bridge between 2 different jurisdictions of the government that need to communicate together in a special way right now. So if your coordinator is not getting your questions answered from the federation level, then there's something wrong. And if your coordinator is not operating in a cooperative fashion with you and helping you to get your questions answered, there's something wrong. most of all, I would say there's a confusion. There's a tendency for some people to look at this like a private club, as if they were, setting up a new chapter of the Rotary or something. That is not true. That is not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be setting up a public government. This is a public institution. And, you cannot keep people out of their public institutions. That's like telling somebody they can't use the post office, or they can't, make use of any other public facility, just arbitrarily. I think that there has been a great misuse and misunderstanding of both the ombudsman and the vetting functions. The assemblies have been taught to vet candidates for offices, and that's it. Vetting is not supposed to be applied to just members, coming in off the street. It's not supposed to be applied generally. Vetting is something that is supposed to happen when you stand up and say, I would like to be the treasurer of North Carolina. I would like to be the chair of the assembly. I'd like to be chairman of the assembly. I'd like to take on an office in the assembly. That's where vetting is supposed to come in. And we do vetting at that level because we don't want to have the distress and harm and embarrassment. For example, if somebody has a record of embezzlement and accounting fraud, you wouldn't want someone like that in charge of your state treasury office, right? So that's why the offices get vetted and the backgrounds get checked for criminal record and that sort of thing. But otherwise, vetting shouldn't be used. Vetting has no place in, keeping people out of their government, their public institutions. And if your assembly is using vetting in an inappropriate way and for inappropriate purposes, it's up to you to report that and to not do it. That's not the way we do things. There's also been an abuse of timeouts. And I can't possibly know all of the individual cases in which timeout has been abused. But there is a tendency in some institutions, in some groups, to abuse timeout to get rid of people that are political rivals or who are inconvenient or troublesome in some way, and they just kind of bounce them out using a timeout. Now, the idea of a timeout is when somebody gets really out of control. When they show up at meetings and they're drunk and disorderly and they start swearing at people and throwing punches and that sort of thing. You do have a right as an assembly to have order in your meetings. And if somebody is consistently causing that kind of a rumpus, they can be given a timeout of anywhere from a week to a year. Now, it's very, very seldom that somebody is causing enough trouble so that they should be bounced out for a year. In fact, I can hardly imagine the sort of circumstance that would be appropriate. But people have been thrown out for various periods of time for literally bad behavior. And that's the only reason that they should be thrown out. So if somebody hasn't been, showing up drunk and disorderly and swearing at other people on air and carrying on in that kind of disruption, then they shouldn't be given a timeout.
I think that people, sorry.
So when you have, let's say, less than 20 people, and someone asks, where's my paperwork? It's been since March. One of those is, and they've already had a year timeout. and they're on their second time out on paperwork, on a move, on whatever. Then you've got other people, if they ask a question, they're put in timeout. If you, I mean, we have assemblies that are saying, we don't have any reports. And I'm going, what do you mean no reports? You're vetting, your ombudsman, your banking, treasury, all of those reports are supposed to be done weekly. And then you send a report in once a month. So the Federation has an idea of how we're growing and how we're expanded. Well, there are assemblies that don't even have reports. They get lectured for an hour. One person may say something and they close the meeting. And this has been going on for more than a year. And people are held out and they're like, we can't even get a committee. We can't get anything up and working. We can't join together because then it's a secret meeting if the coordinator doesn't call it. And the coordinator refuses to allow committees, even in any segment. And they're like, we're stagnated. We can't do this. We can't grow.
Wait, Cynthia. No assembly has to put up with a bad coordinator. Now, there's a big misunderstanding about coordinators. Coordinators don't come from the Federation. Coordinators come from your state. Okay? Coordinators stand up as volunteers and say, okay, well, I'm living in, whatever state, and I'm willing to work as a coordinator to help bring the assembly into session. And so they come forward on their own as volunteers, and they say that they'll volunteer to be a coordinator, and they go through some training as to, what the coordinator's role is, and then they begin working. And you're not limited to just one coordinator. You can have a half dozen coordinators. They're just go-betweens. That's all they are. They're not meant to be anything so exalted. They're not CEOs. They're not in charge in that way. Okay.
So they're not kings over the people. You've already told us that we're all kings and queens with no court. We are all king. This is what you wrote in your book. And here we have somebody. This is what I want to clear this up. Here we have someone who, here's the person right here. Cynthia, you can tell us more about this. I'm not at the international meetings, so I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not witnessing a lot of this. What I know is that we have a problem, and we're going to call it out right here.
Could I finish this one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Coordinators are go-betweens. Period. Okay? And if you've got a coordinator that isn't acting as a go-between, you get another coordinator. You get more people to volunteer for that coordinator slot. You get more coordinators trained up, and you force them to work as a team as in that go-between position. And you know what you should expect from your coordinator. And if your coordinator isn't performing in that way, then get another person to step forward and act as a coordinator. Bypass anybody that isn't doing the job. You can't afford to have this kind of situation go on. Right. And just because there's only one coordinator in your state at this time doesn't mean you can't have half a dozen coordinators. And I find that, where you get somebody who's got kind of a Nazi idea where they're going to rule the roost and control everything, the best way around that is simply to get somebody else to stand as a coordinator, get the coordinator training from Terry, contact Terry and say, I want to be a coordinator. Okay, well, then you can get the training and you can begin functioning. And, if the other coordinator is being an obstructionist, you just say, well, I'm sorry, that's not our role. We're supposed to be here as a go-between helping the assembly get organized. We're not here to keep people from, exercising their right to be part of the process of their government. And this is a public institution. It's not a private club. We're not to use vetting for anything but our officers. When we have elections, we're going to vet the candidates to make sure they're not crooks or something. But otherwise, we're not going to vet everybody. We're not going to vet anybody once. Average members, we're not going to vet average members. We're not going to vet them once. We're not going to vet them twice. I think some guys are coming in here from like CIA backgrounds and military backgrounds, and they're taking this as if this were something that they were issuing security clearances, and that's not true. This is meant to be a rescue mission to bring home as many Americans as possible, and I have said that repeatedly. Anybody who doesn't get that message needs to get it. And we need to bring everybody home that we can possibly bring home, and we need to do it now, and we need to give them a good orientation so that they are aware of the indoctrination they've suffered. Now, one of the big things about our system that's different than the quote unquote democracy that they've been living in or think they're living in is that we don't care how many. We don't need huge numbers. Think about this. If you're the heir to an estate, does it really matter how many other heirs there are? Right? You all have an equal claim. And that is more or less the situation we've got here. Now, you might be mean-spirited, and you might try to keep other heirs from coming forward because you're greedy and you want a bigger share. You got this in your head. You're stupid. Okay, and you think, oh, well, I'm going to get a bigger share for myself if there's only 10 heirs instead of 100 heirs, right? But the fact is that there is so much in America. There's so much that is precious, and there's so much that's valuable that you could not begin to exhaust your inheritance in 1,000 years. So that's stupid. The more the merrier. The more people that come forward and claim their birthright, the better, because the more people are there to defend that birthright and to stand up and take action and share the work. So we want more people. We want all the people who have a right to come forward and claim their birthright. And there's no reason why not to. There's no reason why not to work with people. But you have to have a good orientation program when they walk through the door. You can't just continue to, throw up your hands and say, well, we're doing this thing over here and it's secret. I mean, how stupid is that? This is a public organization. It's part of the government, for Christ's sake.
We're not saying it's secret, Anna. What they're trying to do is charge money, and they're trying to force people to do more work than they need to get in. And this is a problem. It is a problem because we're calling it out. Now it's a problem for them because we're calling it out. We're calling it out because there is too much going on in the way of, they don't understand the job of an ombudsman. People don't know why Cynthia's on this podcast with us every week. I keep my ombudsman on here because she is keeping track and managing and maintaining order. Do you want to talk about what is the ombudsman supposed to be doing? Because we have the person who is calling, who is slandering Cynthia right here on the screen. And then we have a long list of people popping up in the background who are explaining, that they're being kept out for whatever reason. I'm going to start putting them up for you, Anna. Okay. But before that, would you like to go over what is the job of the ombudsman?
Well, the ombudsman is sort of like an arbitration expert. They look at the situation and they try to make a reasonable decision about how it should be handled, how the conflict should be handled. And they're peacemakers. They're trying to find a way for people to have peace about some conflict that's arisen in the course of their experience, whether it's a problem in the assembly or a problem outside the assembly with some other political entity. So the ombudsman is a traditional means that we have of resolving conflicts. And that's really all that the ombudsman does. The marshal at arms is the one in traditional assemblies who's charged with keeping order, per se. The marshal at arms should be the one that, he's the burly guy who, when somebody comes in drunk off the street, shouting, obscenities and waving their fists and angry with the government in sum total, and wants his issue up front, and to take over the attention of the entire meeting, and starts throwing punches at people. The marshal at arms is the one that's supposed to go, hey, bud, that's not allowed in here, and escorts them out. That's the traditional role of the marshal at arms. The marshal at arms in present day may be the guy holding the kill switch on the conference button, the mute switch. If you get somebody in a meeting who's acting irrationally and swearing and being vicious in some regard, then it's the marshal at arms called to say, nah, we've heard enough of that. But so long as somebody is being peaceable and observing the time limits of their presentation, and maintaining some degree of reasonable decorum, then it's not anybody's right to mute them, right? So I think if people really think about our traditions and think about the practicalities of holding meetings and doing things in a reasonable and correct way, they'll realize these simple facts. I mean, you wouldn't expect to go to a meeting of the Rotary or the Lions Club or the Friends of the Library and have drunks staggering in and causing a rumpus, would you? Well, same thing here. If somebody comes in and they're wild and crazy and won't pay attention to the agenda and won't observe the limitation of time that each speaker is given and things of that nature, well, then you have to bump them out until they learn better.
So sometimes the ombudsman is doing that in the meeting, and then they call the marshal at arms and say, hey, marshal, this isn't right. Isn't that the way it works?
Well, every assembly can choose who they're going to have in that function. But, I'm just telling you that traditionally the marshal at arms is the one who does it. And, we have traditions. Traditions are not hard and fast. Traditions are things that they're called traditions or customs. We have our customs. A custom is not a law. A custom is a way that we have had to function in the past that we know works, and therefore we often adopt in the present. It is our custom to take our shoes off at the door so that we're not tracking dirt into the living room, okay? But, does that mean that there's some sort of law that if we come running in during an emergency and we have mud on our feet, that we're going to be chastised or beaten about the ears because we didn't take our shoes off? No. You have to look at customs in a friendly way, but not as a law, not as something that is hard and fast and that thou shalt do it this way, And we have enough things that we have to obey in life for the safety of the community or the general welfare, so that all these little things we don't have to be bothered worrying about minutia. Let's just get down to behaving properly with each other, behaving respectfully, and not treading on other people, not respecting their rights as we expect our rights to be respected. And this just goes right back to the Bible, actually. And when I said, for Christ's sake, I'm trying to bring it home to at least the Christians on the broadcast, that this is just stuff that we've known for, we've been taught this. Love one another as I have loved you. I'm at a loss when it comes to things like slavery and not allowing people to exercise their rights. We have the issue in our country right now in which we've all been enslaved. We haven't been enslaved to a private master, but we've been enslaved to a government master. And it's slavery either way. Now, if we hadn't allowed slavery to continue in the public sector, we wouldn't have it in the private sector now. And it just goes to prove that when you allow an evil in any sector, in any jurisdiction, then you have given that the right to continue to live. You haven't killed the beast. You haven't killed the problem. And so when you deny somebody else their right to speak, you've opened up the door for your own right to be extinguished. Okay? This is something that people really need to consider. I have to take this call, gals. Can I mute this?
Yes, we got it. I got you muted. All right. So we're going to be addressing the rest of this. Cynthia.
Well, again, Anna's told you, you can't hold people out of their government. This is a public government. You can't vet them out. You can't put them out. If they're misbehaving, if you're recording your assembly meetings, you've got your proof of misbehavior.
Cynthia, if somebody's misbehaving in our house, because, we're a family. Anna has said it on repeat. We are a family. We are a family. This is about family. She says, I'm a grandmother. I'm not a politician. And meanwhile, we have everybody in the assemblies who are confused. They're distracted with, wartime. They're distracted with the criminality. They're distracted with aesthetic. They're distracted with anything and everything instead of the reconstruction of our nation. So we need everybody to be focused on when you're reconstructing, friends, when you're having, a construction job happening on your home, maybe you're remodeling or something. It's a mess. The aesthetic is not what you want it to be. It is what it needs to be so that you can get through the construction so that you can have, enjoy the improvements. And so there's going to be messy conversations, especially when you're deciding. If you're trying to build a new kitchen, and if you're doing it for the whole family, then sometimes you got to take a lot of other people into consideration. It's not just what the one person wants. And then you have to think about resale value and all these other things when you're doing it. And in that process, there's a lot of things that you just might not get your way.
Well, you've got to look at these coordinators. Our coordinator is so busy. He gets a committee up, he turns it over, they run the committee. His job is to organize. His job is not to run it, to tell us what to think, how to act, who to let in, who not to let in. That's not his job. His job is to coordinate. If you don't have people, you can't stand your pillars up. If you keep those people out, you're never going to get your assembly stood up. You need people. You need your
knowledgeable people who are interested in doing the work. They have to be reading. They have to be paying attention to what's going on. They need to be listening. And this diminishment, what is the diminishment? I see it, we put a stop to it in the chat. If I can put a stop to it on YouTube so that YouTube people aren't just diminishing each other constantly, then for heaven's sake, can't we just stop it in the assembly? Why are you diminishing other people in the assembly? Anyone who is trying to do something, listen, none of us have stood up a government before. We're not going to be perfect at it. Also, on top of that, we're all learning how to do all kinds of things. We're not media people, me and Cynthia. We aren't media trained. We're over here running this thing. Well, we're doing it because we want people to have access to Anna so you can directly ask questions so that we can straighten things out so that we can get things stood up. And all of you folks out there that are trying so hard to try to destroy and diminish and divide people from inside, you are the problem. Why are you bringing the imperialistic lies into this? Why are you bringing it in? We're trying to hold it out. You want to hold something out? Look at this person. This person wants to vet for felons. No, we don't care. Most of the prison system is not even appropriate. The prison system is for profit. We're not for that. We're not for a prison system. We're not for this part of it. Most of those things, most of these people need to be, this is not what, Anna's not saying you need to vet for felons for people to join their assembly and come back home. That is not what she's talking about. This is the imperialistic mindset, the corporate mindset that our coordinator doesn't support. He doesn't allow it. If he's going to jump in on any part of the meeting, it's going to be because he wants you to stop with the corporate mindset. Hey, Anna.
I already said it. The only time we vet is when somebody's running for an elected office.
I don't think people understand. People are not getting it. Look at this. This is the conversation right here, Anna. Like, we can't keep going back to this.
No, we are not vetting members, okay? We're not vetting people when they come in off the street and join up as members of the assembly. We only vet people that are running for an office in the assembly. Period. Never have. It totally has never been done in the history of this country that individual members of an assembly were vetted. It's only officers. It's only people that are running for office. And it's only because we don't want to wind up with a situation like the one I described where an embezzler runs for state treasurer, okay? So we do a very simple background check on people that are running for office. I mean, how much more plain can I make this?
Look at this poor guy. Look at this poor guy.
But office holders, people that are running for office, candidates for office.
Cynthia, you want to tell Anna about Leonard?
Leonard's been trying to get into the assembly. He's been an American State National since 2021, couple of years. He's in my study group. We've been educated. We're not newbies here. Cannot get in. There are 3 or 4 levels of vetting, 5 levels. He's been through 3 because he went public that they won't let him in. Now they've decided to put him on a permanent timeout. He's not even up.
There's no such thing as a permanent timeout.
That's what the coordinator.
Oh, Peterson, listen to me.
Here's his coordinator right here.
All right.
Here's his coordinator right here, Anna.
No, I don't care. You don't have a right to keep someone out of their assembly.
Thank you. Say it 3 times. 1 for the air, 1 for the land, and 1 for the sea. No.
No.
Just stop.
There is no vetting except for those who are running for an office. Period.
Look at what he's posting. He's the infiltrator. He's the traitor when he's posting all this stuff in the chat over here, Anna. But he's the one also, we sent you what he's doing out in the public. Friends, y'all need to stop it. Stop it. Behave.
You need to stop and think about what you're doing.
That's Paul on Sheboygan, Michigan. That's the coordinator that's gone after me because I'm just trying to help Leonard, who's trying to get into his assembly. And these people are so frustrated. They're walking away.
What you do is you teach. You don't reject. You come up with a good orientation package to help people overcome their indoctrination, and you teach them. And if they are having real trouble with understanding that this is a different system and this is how it works, you put them through a newbie class. I mean, you don't deny them access to listen to meetings or to make their comments or to question things. Think of this as a school. What did I say my role was? To educate, to empower, and to pass the torch. Okay, this is the process. We have to educate people into our system of government. We have to focus them back on the rights and prerogatives of the individual, not the group, not the democracy, not the majority, but the individual. If we don't have our focus firmly fixed on protecting the rights and the property of the individual, and a right is just a property interest, right? Okay. If we don't have our focus on the individual and taking care of that individual, then our focus is the foreign focus. Okay. Our American government is focused on one thing: the rights and property of the individual. We're not caring about the 51 or 52 or anything like that. We're worried about each one. So if you're going around stomping on somebody's rights because you're not comfortable with their views, or because you think that they're too much work to have to teach, that's the exact wrong answer. Okay? We don't vet average people. We vet candidates for office. And you've never been taught anything different than that. Not one person in the Federation has ever told you anything different. So any coordinator at the state level who isn't getting this right needs to get it right now.
Is this the level of vetting that you want anyway? What is this?
No. This is somebody who has gone off the deep end and thinks that he's God. And he's not.
We can just change the subject now. That's enough of that. Like we've been talking about this, and we're just letting everybody know that you guys need to behave. We are here in love. And you know what it is, Anna, is teaching is a lot of work. I've been doing it over here. The hardest thing we do is repeat ourselves constantly.
Right. And those who are doing this have it wrong, and yet they're setting themselves up to be the teachers. You know? And I have a real problem with that. A lot of this is military indoctrination. You saw it right there with the acronym STUPID. We don't call people stupid.
Right.
Would you call your mother stupid? Would you
Right.
call your dad stupid? Would you call your brother stupid? No, that's just rude, disrespectful. It has a bad attitude stamped all over it. And it has military mindset stamped all over it. Oh, well, we're just going to, put you in this little box. We're going to label you. We're going to categorize you. And then we're going to deprive you of your rights. And we're going to deprive you of your freedom. And we're going to deprive you of your standing. And we're just going to deprive you, because we're what? God? No, that's not what we're about. And if any coordinator, and I don't care if it's Paul Peterson or who it is, any coordinator isn't acting right, you get a new coordinator.
I hope that answered the question. Whoever's out there that you can't get in, you get a new coordinator.
And remember, stand up as a coordinator. Volunteer yourself. Remember, the coordinators come from the states. They don't come from the Federation. We don't have a group of people here that we've trained to be coordinators and go out all over the country and just show up and, here, I'm a coordinator from the Federation. No, it doesn't work like that. Coordinators come from the state. They are volunteers that raised their hand and said, okay, well, I'll serve as a coordinator for, my state. And then they get training and then they act as a go-between. Now, I don't know what's so hard for people to understand about that. Is that an old-fashioned phrase or something? Or
I'll tell you what it is, Anna. I'm going to tell you what it is. Are you ready? These people, they are only used to what we talked about. They're used to the civil, imperialist, structured, aesthetically pleasing military rule. And they're used to somebody being sent down who has the training already. And what you're talking about is they need to pull their diapers up and they need to do the work and they need to stand up. We, the people, have to do it. When someone has the nerve to say easier said than done, I'm going to tell you what, you lose me right there. The moment you say, oh, well, that's easier said than done, that means you are not doing the work. If you're not doing the work, I don't have time. And Anna does not have time for that. We don't have time for that. So the only way this works is that you get up and you stand up and you do the work. Can't tell you how much stuff I'm reading. I can't tell you how many things I'm drowning in, having to relearn everything, and then also take criticism on top of that. I'm a big girl. Bring it. Say whatever you have to say to us. But if you're not doing anything, then be quiet. Go take a nap.
First, you have to educate yourself. Then you have to educate other people. Then you're all empowered because you're educated, right? So now you're empowered and you actually know how to do things and you know how things work and you can go forward, right? This is what this is about. You educate in order to be empowered. You educate yourself to be empowered. You educate your neighbors to empower them so that as a group you are empowered, so that you're building your empowerment. Your knowledge is your power. How many people have heard the saying, knowledge is power? Well, this is true. The more knowledge that you obtain yourself and the more that you obtain as a group, the better.
Okay, Anna's having to deal with like managing and corralling all these preschool kindergartners or whatever. And I would argue that the kindergartners I know are actually smarter than this. They're more loving and they're more graceful. They offer more grace than this.
There's a fine line between keeping order, and getting business done in an assembly and chaos that can be caused by half a dozen people who haven't taken the time to educate themselves but think they know how their government works and are mistaking that government for our government, So that's why I say you have to develop a good orientation program. You have to do that basic training, that basic education function to get people's heads turned in the right direction right up front. Otherwise, they're going to continue to act upon what they've experienced for 50 years. They're not going to just automatically know and snap into place in a different form of government. That you have to teach your form of government to them, and you have to, highlight the differences between what they've already done and known and what you're doing now. There's a huge difference between a democracy and a Republican form of government. And, one of the, thought process things, imagine a guy walking in, he's just out of the service. He may still be wearing his uniform. He walks into the back of a huge auditorium and there's all these people faced away from him sitting in chairs, right? And it's dead silence. And he walks in and he says, "Who's in charge here?" And with one motion, they all turn around in their seat and they look at him and they say, "We are." That's the difference.
We just need to operate in love. The problem is, Anna, they're not used to love. They're used to being passive aggressive. We have new people coming in all the time on North Carolina, and the way they behave in the beginning when they don't know anybody is different than the way that they behave after they've been at a couple of meetings. When they come in at the beginning, a lot of them are sassy, they're disrespectful, because this is what the imperialist educational system has done to everyone. They have made everyone petty. They've made everyone want to argue about the shiny bright lights. You're supposed to only, when you go to a party or something, you're only allowed to ever talk about the one thing that was the bad thing on television that day, because they're all the bazillion amazing, loving, brilliant things that happen. They don't even put that on the news. They only ever find the one thing that is traumatic and put it on the news. So you could do, the first step you could do is turn off the television. Turn it off. And how about we're going to talk about anything that wasn't on television? If we're going to have a conversation, I like to have dinner parties now where we either play games or we have a deal. We can talk about anything that wasn't on any media platform. If it wasn't on the media, we can talk about it. And otherwise, we can't talk about it. That changes things all around. And it challenges people to try to think of what to talk about, because that's when they realize, Anna, they don't have a thought of their own.
Well, I stopped watching broadcast television and media in 1987.
Yep.
And the reason I stopped listening was I realized that I wasn't getting anything useful out of it. I sat down and I made up a little tally sheet with 4 rows. One row had the heading sex. The next one had a heading death. The next one had a heading sex and death. And the the 4th column was other. And I sat there and I listened to the evening news for a week, and I tallied, which story how many stories about death, how many stories about sex and death, how many stories about just sex, how many stories about something else. And what I found out was that 87% of what we were listening to every night was nothing but sex and death. And the other thing I observed just in the process of this analysis was that it was all stuff we couldn't do anything about. It was all just this prurient, knowledge of bad things happening. Like, a 15-year-old bicyclist was torn in half between 2 semi-trucks in Los Angeles. Well, what can I do about this except feel bad for the boy and his family? There isn't anything you can do about it. So, what practical use is that knowledge to you or to the victim? Zero.
Is this our job? Is this our job right here, Anna?
Yes. But in the process of what you're calling deprogramming, isn't something that is done in the way that you're doing it. We started at education, then we educate and we integrate, and then we bring them into their full power. There's a process here. People have to be educated before they can be truly empowered. Otherwise, they're just running around like loose cannons. We're not treating individual Americans as if they've been to communist China and indoctrinated in the same way. Our indoctrination is a cultural indoctrination and misunderstanding verbiage, okay? So, begin with teaching people the difference between a democracy and a Republican form of government. Begin with the pyramid of power and show how our government is exactly inverted with respect to the government that we've known. Now, you will notice that the federal government is a pyramid with a CEO at top, and then you have all these bureaucrats going all the way down to the base. Okay, and that can, that's the county of officials. Okay, so you've got this big pyramid in the federal government that's all hierarchical power with the president sitting on top of the pyramid. Okay, Now, our government is exactly the opposite, 180 degrees reversed, where we have all these people up on top, and their government is all centering down on their spokesperson. Okay, so their spokesperson is informed of their opinions and has committed to being their spokesperson. It's a whole different thing from being a spokesperson for a group versus being the CEO telling the group what to do. Okay? And any school child should be able to look at a hourglass shaped graph and figure this out. You know, oh, well, our government goes from the many and, comes to a spokesperson who talks for the many people, right? And their government starts out with a CEO who, by whatever process, became the CEO, and then he dictates to everybody below him. Different idea, different concept, different function, different duty even, So these are things that we can do. And whether you want to call it deprogramming or educating, I call it educating, because it's not so much a matter of deprogramming somebody from brainwashing.
They're not like war criminals. That's the problem. The way this is written is like you pulled somebody out of like some war crime, or you whatever, and then now you're assimilating. You don't assimilate us like that.
You don't. It's not like we've been in Chinese boot camp, okay? It's right. That we have, in the course of our lifetime, picked up some wrong ideas, about government and how our government specifically is supposed to operate. But we can educate people and show them this, and they can intellectually take it in and go, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was a difference.
But you have to give them grace, Anna. Look, when we were kids, like, this is what you remember, Anna. You remember that you talk to somebody and then you say, la, 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 and then they say, wah, 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 and then you say something, and then maybe they say, hey, you hurt my feelings, Anna. And then you would say, what? What did I do to hurt your feelings? And then they say, well, you said whatever, no. And then you say, oh, no, that wasn't what I meant. I'm so sorry. And then y'all just keep going on about your day, because that is how we did things when we were growing up. But right now, society isn't allowed to do that. And a lot of this programming came from churches. A lot of this programming came from schools. A lot of this programming came from the people that you're supposed to love and trust and respect. And that's the problem. The problem is the programming for this Nicholas guy. He needs to understand that most of the people that are in the situation, himself included, all of us included, we have this problem that we were by the most trusted people taught all these wrong things, including even our parents who signed away our birth certificate because they were unaware of the trickery.
Right.
They were unaware of it.
I guarantee you that I could bring 100 Americans in off the street, and I could stand up in front of that room, and I could have one book that says American history and one that says U.S. history, and say, look, these are two different subjects. And they'd all go, oh, I didn't know that.
Because how could they know? How could they know?
No, but I mean, this is just an example of it. Start out with the basics.
Right.
Oh, there's American history and there's U.S. history.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to start out and kind of go, hello, wake up, friend. Here you are.
Give them kisses. Mwah, mwah. You don't have to hit them. You could just give them kisses. Say, listen, friend, this isn't like, you know, we have a lot of these situations happening on our North Carolina committees as well. And we just actually, you know, we were feeling, you know, working on some of our different pillars. One of our militia pillars, we were having a hard time because everybody wants to try to, you know, everybody's trying to do a good job, you know, but
I know.
everybody does a good job. But what they don't realize is that, you know, how much are we affected? How much are we affected? And yesterday we had like this aha moment in our militia committee where we actually knew that we did it wrong. We all worked together to try to iron it out word by word. And when we did it right, we felt like it was incredible. All we did was form one sentence that was right. But it was such a win for our committee because now we're like, okay, we're going to keep going on this. So you have to allow everybody to stumble. You know, a baby doesn't just get up and start walking.
Right.
It has to fall. And when it falls, you're not going to say, get up, you little dummy.
And you're going to catch up. You're going to find out that you get caught up too.
Yes.
I mean, you're going to recognize your own indoctrination. The point is going to come and you're going to go, oh, I was indoctrinated, so I did that wrong. Oh, well, gee, I now recognize my own log in my own eye. And so now I'm going to take that away and I'm going to start doing things the American way. You know, I was still caught over here doing it the British territorial way, and I'm sorry, I'm going to, you know, reverse myself here and do it the right way. We all go through that. There is no instantaneous, you know, understanding and you know, it's a process, and it's an education process. And you know, number one,
yeah,
you have to educate people about their own identity.
That happens with a lot of hard conversations, right, Cynthia? We've had a lot of hard conversations.
If the people won't talk and meet you face to face and say, listen, I can offer this solution. Let's come together. We'll bring you into the assembly and we'll watch you for a little while. Once we've got that trust, that's all we're asking. You don't know us. We don't know you. Come in and let's work together. We've got so many jobs that we'll even let you tag along and listen in and figure and put in input. But you're going to have to be there for a little while before we look at you for vetting and for a chair or for a committee leader. But come on
vetting
in.
For a position.
Welcome.
Vetting for a position, not to get in.
Right.
Vetting That's for right. Because everybody gets to come in as toddlers. Look, y'all come in as toddlers. Everybody, all of us came in as toddlers, and we fell down and we get up, and we fell down and we get up. I mean, Anna and I were working on the intro for this show, and she kept saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, whatever it was. I mean, there was such a tremendous education in just that. So, you know, there's a tremendous education in every sentence, every phrase, every whatever. And the reason that we're having to go line by line by line, this is so boring and whatever, you know, as we're writing out the SOPs, is because you have to know something that you're going to practice. You have to know it first. And you don't know it. You think you know something because you were ex-military. You don't know anything. You're the worst one. If you were a teacher in the public school system, if you were military, if you were a doctor, you don't know anything in this, you know? Anna?
It's a new world.
That's right.
You know, it's a completely different government system. And once you realize that you need to put aside everything that you thought you know, you're better off. You know, the moment that you know that you're ignorant about something, and stop assuming anything about it. Stop assuming that you know your own government, because you don't. You haven't been taught it. Okay, it's not your fault. It doesn't mean that you're stupid. It just means that you don't know. And you have to take some time out and learn. You know, you have to go back to school. You never studied American history in the school system since 1965. If you've been in school in America since 1965, you have never studied American history. There are a few oddball places like Wisconsin where it endured for another 10 years past 1965 when we did study American history along with U.S. history. Okay? But then the rest of the country, all those American history books started disappearing as of 1965, and within a couple of years, they were gone. And then, as a double whammy, in 1976, Jimmy Carter came in and said, oh, well, we're going to set up a federal Department of Education, I assume for federal employees, because nobody else should be in any kind of federal Department of Education, right? But he came in and he started this federal Department of Education. And then, of course, all the state franchise organizations went kowtow to that. And suddenly we had this huge bureaucratic monopoly on education in America. And this federal department was mandating what we were going to study and what we were going to not study, and, what kind of information was appropriate for the public to know. Hello? I mean, we had censorship in our schools. We lost control of our public schools. And instead, here's our employees determining how much the public could know. So how can the public tell the employees what to do if the employees are determining how much the public can know? Okay, so that's, so they started teaching us their history exclusively so that we would assume that that was our history when it's not. U.S. history is not our history. American history is our history. Okay? So, just stand there with the two books in your hands and say, did you know that these are two separate subjects? Did you know that American history is not U.S. history? And you missed out on the course, folks. It's not your fault. Nobody's blaming you. But you weren't taught. So now you need to learn. You at age 50, you now need to learn how your American government is supposed to function and what our history is as opposed to their history. It's these United States versus those United States. Okay?
It's in, it's in those little, what do they say? The devil is in the details. In the details. Okay, look at this. We have said it 50,000 times, no vetting. Can you please read this, Anna?
Okay, Troy Brown. Michigan's vetting plan is approved by the Federation. And as part of the Michigan Assembly, we follow it to the T. Leonard came in demanding his government or assembly report to him. Okay, well, you've got a misunderstanding on both sides here. The Federation doesn't go around approving vetting plans. The Federation teaches people how to do vetting. Okay, that we teach assemblies how to do vetting, which requires a little bit of expertise. Okay, we teach them how to do vetting. We don't tell them to apply it to new members. There has never been any kind of directive from the Federation even suggesting such a thing. The Federation has taught you to do vetting of candidates for office. If somebody isn't running for an office, which is a position of public trust, there is absolutely no reason or right for the assembly to be poking into that person's past or their their criminal record or anything else. If they're not seeking an office, a position of public trust, there's no reason for them to be vetted. Okay? And so, listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. And I know how the Federation is supposed to be operating, as well as how the assemblies are supposed to be operating. And I can tell you for a fact that there is absolutely no reason or tradition or custom or anything else allowing any assembly to vet a public membership organization. This is public. It's not private. It's not a club. This is our public institution, our public government. I don't care, what color or creed or anything else someone is. When they walk through that door, if they're an American, if they are living in your state of the union, they have the same exact rights as you. Now, you think about this from the American standpoint, and when we accept a public office, we're making a sacrifice. We are giving up some of our freedom and some of our privacy in order to stand in the limelight of the public glare and do work. It's a sacrifice for us to come forward and do work in the public arena. Okay? But we do it because it's needed. We do it for the sake of our country and our state. Okay? So those people who take on that responsibility allow themselves to be examined by the public. They stand there and they allow themselves to be vetted so that they are proving up on their side of the commitment. But average people are not submitting to any kind of vetting. They're not asking for the public to trust them. Okay? They're not giving up their privacy in order to serve the public. They're not making that sacrifice.
Anna,
when they're rolling in off the street, they're as close to being in their sovereign capacity as they'll ever be.
We keep going over time, but that's because we're having a good time. We're talking about the truth, and we're talking about the truth. We're 15 minutes over already, but this needs to be wrapped up with a bow. And so, with your blessing, we'd like to just finish it up for the next 15 minutes, if you don't mind, Anna, because I think that it's important for us to put the clarity here and wrap it up with a bow. This is obviously a really big problem in Michigan specifically. There's a whole big argument going on in the chat, and everyone needs to learn how to offer grace. Nature offers grace, and you have to at some moment decide that everybody's wrong, not any of you are right, and then come in a room together and start over. But it seems there's a lot of confusion here. It says that, it's not a Federation approved thing. It's a Terry approved thing. I don't go to the national meetings. I don't sit in meetings with Terry. I don't have any idea what she says or does. But you two
Terry
do.
gets things wrong on a regular basis. Okay? Terry gets things wrong on a regular basis, and so does everybody else. Oh. And I think that fear is the number one thing that I see is the common thread in all the mistakes that are being made. Now, we're not here to be fearful. We're here to be fearless. And we're here to attend to our business. We have to be hard-headed about getting our business done. So, we're not going to fear communists. We're not going to fear fascists. We're not going to fear anybody or anything. We're just going to do our best to understand who we are and then stand up for who we are. Americans are the most empowered people on earth. Our laws and our traditions stand fast in the face of anything. So we don't have to be afraid. What we need to know is who we are. And once we know who we are, well, then the communists can clack and they can talk about their class warfare and their religious warfare and their warfare. And we can know that they're just a bunch of cynics trying to gain trying to gain an ad. They're trying to get something for themselves out of their conflict. All these people that are constantly trying to create conflict instead of causing unity. All these people who are trying to breed fear instead of those who are creating fearlessness. They need to be educated. They need to be taken aside and say, "Hey, brother, don't you see? These are these things that create fear and these things that create conflict. That's what we're getting away from. We're not here for race baiting and victimhood. We're not here for fear of different political views or all of the mechanization that goes with things like Saul Alinsky and all this idea that, radicals and rebels are so cool. No, we're not here for any of that. We're here to be us. We're here to be Americans. Americans have their own strength, their own tradition. And, if you don't want to be part of that tradition, fine, the door's open. You walked in, you can walk out. But we are who we are, and we have our way of conducting our business as a nation, as a country. And here it is. Here's how we do it. And this is a form of government that has not been practiced in this country on a systemic level for 160 years. So we're all learning. There isn't anybody here who has ever actually experienced the American government running at full tilt. Instead, we've got like an 8-cylinder engine and it's running on 4 cylinders. Okay? So there's a lot about this that even people who've lived here all their lives don't know and are just beginning to grasp. So, we're in the education phase that leads to empowerment. And every single one of us has to keep continually checking, are we just assuming that as a basis because that's what we knew as kids? Are we adopting US ideas because that's what we were exposed to? Or are we making the effort to find out what the American vision is? Okay, so the Americans have got their own traditions, they have their own laws, they have their own government, they have their own structure of government, they have their own history, and we're finally learning that as Americans. Now, if you want to be a US citizen, you're welcome to. If you want to be a municipal system citizen, you're welcome. We have no problem with that. Those 3 groups have always been here. They'll probably always be here, so far as I know. And if you want to go on down the street and join your district assembly, and if you want to get all teary-eyed about U.S. history, you just go right ahead. But as for the rest of us, we're Americans, and we're going to operate our American government. Some of the worst battles we've had in terms of getting organized have been caused by people who actually do belong in district or municipal district assemblies. They come in to our assembly and they're in the right church but the wrong pew. Okay, they come in and they say, well, I'm an American. I'm owed all these different rights and prerogatives as an American. But when you talk to them, you find out that they have a deep-seated affiliation with or loyalty toward the King of England. Well, okay, great, all right, there you go. Walk on down the street and join the district assembly. Or you find out that they're Catholic and they're looking for a Catholic theocracy. They're trying to have religious meetings at the assembly. They're confused, and you say, well, I'm sorry, but this isn't a theocracy. This is a Republican form of government. And, go on down the street to the municipal assembly meeting, and you'll find your form of government, and there you are, just stand there in the middle, and okay, there's the district assembly. You go that way. That's your pew. And you over here, there's the municipal assembly. You can go over there. There's your seat. There's nothing wrong about being a Catholic and wanting to live in a Catholic theocracy. Go ahead.
They need to read that little 100-page book that you gave us, Anna, and they'll realize that the Pope is the one who created this corporatocracy nonsense. So what did you call it again? There is a national status for anyone who wants to have that under the Pope. What is that?
Right. They're municipal citizens of the United States.
Right.
And they can live under that theocracy if they want to. There is a British territorial United States of America incorporated, and they can live under the British crown if they want to. Just like at the end of the Revolutionary War, we had all these people living in this country. We had Catholics that were throughout the Eastern Seaboard. We had Brits that were up north in New England and also down south in Virginia. Okay. We had all these different groups of people, and we didn't alienate any of them. We said, okay, you can stay here. And, if you want to be affiliated with the king, you go off here and act as a U.S. citizen. U.S. territorial U.S. citizen. Go ahead. You can live under the king. You can subject yourself to the king. We don't care, You can still live here. You can't actually own land here, but you can live here under the Residence Act. And we said the same thing to the Catholics. Okay, you want to live in a Catholic theocracy? Fine. That's your business. You can stay here. You can live here under the Residence Act. And you can be a municipal citizen of the United States if that's what pleases you. We're all for freedom. We're all for freedom of choice. And there are people to this day, there are Tories to this day who want to live under the King of England. Well, God bless them and go. We didn't say otherwise. Okay, and there are Catholics to this day who believe in a Catholic hegemony of the entire earth. They think that the Pope is the trustee of the entire earth, and they want to live under a Catholic theocracy. Well, there you go. You got the municipal government. Go be a municipal citizen of the United States. Stay here under the Residence Act, and peace be with you. But don't come into our assemblies and cause trouble for us. Figure out who you are, too, and go sit in the right pew.
Provenance matters, right, Anna? Provenance matters. People don't know their own provenance.
Provenance and intention matter. Okay? So we may have all been born here in this country, but we don't have to have all the same political allegiances. Right. If your allegiance is to the King of England and you're a Tory, by all means, go, there's the thumb pointing in the right direction. And if you're a Catholic and you want to live in a Catholic theocracy, well, gee, you have that option. There's the other direction. You can go join your municipal assembly and be happy as a clam. You can talk about the Virgin all you want down there. All right, this is not our government in the sense of being an American government. Those are foreign governments. I mean, I think we all know that the Holy Roman Empire has nothing to do with us, except to be a subcontractor of our government providing certain services. And I think we all know that the British government is a separate government. and that it has nothing to do with us, except, again, being a subcontractor providing certain enumerated services. And that we have Brits and members of the Holy Roman, even though the Holy Roman Empire technically ceased to exist in 1809, the successors are here, right, doing their thing. So it shouldn't be any big surprise to anybody that there are these populations. There are 3 populations here. They all have assemblies. For some reason, they used to call them societies. Okay? They used to call their assemblies societies. But then over the years, being exposed to us, I suppose they started calling their gatherings assemblies too. But the difference is that there are district assemblies. Okay, there's that word. Anytime you see the word district, a little light should go on and you should say, oh, district. District of Columbia. Oh, okay, District of Columbia. We get this. So when you see a district assembly, that's like saying sovereign citizen. It's an oxymoron, right? They don't really have assemblies. They have societies. They may have associations, but they're not really assemblies in the same sense that our assemblies exist, okay? Anyway, so when you see district, realize that's District of Columbia. That's a foreign government that is not the endemic, natural, organic government here, okay? And they have certain duties that they owe us, and they have certain services they provide to us, but they are not us.
Okay? All right, Anna, we have to go.
You got your egg timer on. I know, I heard it.
We gotta go. But Anna, Ruth is wanting to know if she's a Bulgarian citizen and her offspring are British and Bulgarian citizenship. Do they use the GFG to reconvey?
Well, okay. The non-incorporated name for Bulgaria is Bulgaria, just as you have it there, upper lower case. Okay. Okay, well, yeah, Global Family Group can reconvey through the International Land Recording System. And, you should just use Bulgaria as you have it stipulated there. You need to kind of consider if citizenship is even appropriate, because citizenship implies that you have a obligation to serve those governments. And as a natural living being, you don't have any such obligation. Only you can obligate yourself. So if you use the International Land Recording Service that's provided by the Global Family Group, you have to think about where you're reconveying your estate and your political alliance to. Okay, so if you're going to claim that you're a Bulgarian national, which is what we're talking about, or you're going to claim that you're a British national, you have to consider where you fit in that system as a land and soil jurisdiction inhabitant, part of that population. I think one of the things that a lot of people have a problem with is that there's a difference between nationality and citizenship. Okay, nationality means that you were born in that country or born to parents from that country, and you inherited your nationality from them. It doesn't necessarily mean anything about citizenship at all. Citizenship is when you grow up and whether or not you have an obligation to serve the government. Citizenship is an obligation to serve the government. Okay? And you can be a national and have no obligation to serve the government at all. Okay, so try to get it straight in your head, the difference between your nationality and whether or not you have citizenship obligations as a result of that nationality. Here in America, we don't have obligations foisted on us from birth. In Britain, if you're born on British soil, then you are British and you have obligations to the government from the time that you're an infant. Here in America, you have no such obligation to the government. You can be an American national and have zero obligation to serve the government. And that's what freedom really is to be free to make your decision whether you're going to serve the government or the government is going to serve you. And that's where the Americans made this gigantic break from everything that had gone before. Everybody else had been serving their government. And we said, no, we're free of that. People need to make their own choices about whether they're going to serve a government or not. And so we're born free. And we don't make that kind of commitment until we're grown up and know what we're doing. And we set limits on it. We step into the role of serving the government for a time period. And then when we don't want to serve the government anymore, we step back into our private capacity. So we have a different system, and we don't have citizenship obligations that are just foisted off on us at birth. And that's an important difference between America and many, 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 many other countries. That's one of the reasons that being an American and having, being part of the nationality that your state bequeaths to you as a Virginian or as a North Carolinian or a Floridian is so precious. That's why people all over the world want to come here and enjoy those freedoms that we purportedly have and that we won for ourselves and our progeny, and yet have been stolen from us by deceit from our employees. Okay, so now here we are. We're back on track. We know who we are. We know who's who in this game. We know that there are employees under subcontract, and we know that they played us very wrong. They've been acting in breach of trust. They've been evading their obligations under their work contracts. They've been evading their obligations under their use permits. They've been evading their obligations under their anyway.
We went way over time. I told you, we're getting in trouble now.
Okay, kids. But anyway, they've been evading their obligations, and we need to uphold our positions. Okay, so learning everything you can about your government and recognizing the fact that your government is different than anything you've ever experienced will help all of us. All right?
All right, you guys, we love you. Anna loves you so much she can never even leave because we have so much fun here. So we will see you next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you're here.